Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I certainly appreciate this very important hearing. Comes at a time when a lot of us are thinking about drones in connection with their commercial uses. Now, I represent a unique district, to be sure, the nation's capital, the District of Columbia. It has been declared a, there's a word that's used, no drone zone. So that if you live in the nation's capital, almost 700,000 people do, I am interested as the nation prepares for commercial uses of drone to have things delivered by drone. By the way, this includes parts of, near-end parts of Maryland and Virginia. Whether you think this 15-mile ring, it's a 15-mile ring, where drones cannot fly, if that is what they do, without FAA authorization. I ask you whether you think that's, obviously I have to think about safety first, and that's what I'm thinking. Now I'm trying to think about the commercial uses of drones to deliver packages at Christmas, for example. Whether you think something can be done to make sure that drones fly within this 15-mile zone, the nation's capital, safely. For commercial purposes. I don't know if Mr. Alonzo, Mr. Nguyen, or any of you have any ideas on that, but I'd be grateful to have them.
Well, I would say that a blanket prohibition of any type of drone, any size, any speed, any capabilities, without any particular specification of what requirements.
It says without, and I'm not going to be here when the FAA testifies, without specific FAA authorization. Do you believe what is envisioned is a unique system for flying within this 15-mile radius? And by the way, this could apply to everybody else's residential area too, if that was considered to be a zone where there may be some kind of secure facility as well.
But obviously the current regulation in this area is one that is coming from issues of security. So I think we're being absolutely safe and secure, but I think there are many opportunities to enable commercial drone use even within the Washington, D.C. area with more logical regulations as to what's permitted and what's not.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think part of the challenge there is to actually find the right way to say yes to drones. And it's not just to commercial operations, it's to drones operated by first responders or helping provide situational awareness to police. There's a lot of different uses of drones that could be constructed. They don't have to be purely commercial and save lives, as we've seen. In that context, how do you say yes to drones that you know are going to be compliant? And that's, I think, where the digital infrastructure of UTM is going to be so important. So I think there may be an opportunity to explore even places as sensitive as Washington, D.C. through the pilot program by virtue of surfacing all the hard questions about how do you mitigate the security concerns, how do you have a combination of counter-UAS and compliant drones operating so that you can discriminate between people who are flying with permission and flying those who aren't. That is where I see the opportunity to actually stress test whether we could operate safely in, obviously, the most sensitive airspace in the U.S.
I appreciate the notion of a pilot program. The right way to say yes may be encompassed in these words without specific FAA authorization. It does seem to me we ought to be able to get there that way. Is coordination being done with the Department of Defense? Is there concern in this age of terrorism that drones not only here but elsewhere could be used, or is this going on just with the FAA, which has the major responsibility? Does any of you know, have an answer to that question?
My organization works very closely with—
Would you speak up, please?
Sure. My organization works very closely with the Department of Defense, particularly JIDO, on how to handle the use of drones, particularly outside of the continental United States. There are things inside of the continental United States that make that a more challenging policy discussion. FAA, FCC regulations, rules that prevent the disablement of an aircraft, which I'm in favor of, and so forth. So there are some subtleties here that are being looked at on how to implement counter drone technology in security type in a security type context. Overseas, it's a little bit easier when our troops are directly threatened or our allies are directly threatened. But we are, as an industry, working with them to develop those technology security solutions.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be interested as well in any involvement of the Department of Defense with this very important issue. Thank you very much. I yield back.
Mr. Woodall.